Hey guys, so I just recorded this whole video about the Kimberly Potter trial. I got a little long-winded. It's going to be close to a half hour. The good news is, I think it's going to be kind of 3 separate distinct phases, maybe 4. When I watch this during the editing process, I'll try to find some timestamps. I'll put them in the description below. That way, when you're watching the video, if you don't have time to watch a whole 30 minutes, because that's a long time, you can turn the video off and hopefully find your way back to finish the video later, because I don't really want to make a new one that's much shorter because I think I had a lot of important things to say. I don't know. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoy. All right, so a lot of people have asked me for my opinion on the Kimberly Potter trial. It might be more appropriate to call it the Dante Wright murder trial, or my thoughts on the murder of Dante Wright. When people asked me about this video initially, my response was a little bit terse. I was just like, you know what? I don't want to address that. It's cut and dry. It's not a good shooting. For people who don't remember, we're going to go over the video here in just a second. But this was the shooting where an officer was dealing with a resisting subject and fired her weapon thinking that she had her taser in her hand. So when people ask me about this, I would just kind of respond, yeah, she messed up. She messed up big time, and she's going to pay for it. Now that the trial has commenced and come to its completion, she's been found guilty, it kind of brings up some more things, and I actually do want to kind of address the situation. I kind of had a reaction myself that I didn't really expect, and because of that, I thought it would be appropriate to go ahead and make a video now. Before I get too much into like my opinion, whatever, let's go over kind of the facts and how everything happened, and in doing so, we're going to go over the video. Now, I'm going to go over this video in a very critical manner. This is how we learn how to do better going forward. I also, let me say, this is something that cops do all the time. We watch each other's videos. We watch our own videos. When you get done with a run that didn't go the way you wanted it to, you watch the video, and often we beat up ourselves on what we did wrong. And we're often the first ones to point out, and we even do it before the video a lot too. Like, we'll have a situation where me and another officer or a couple officers are dealing with a certain subject, and things don't go exactly the way they should have gone, and then we end up having a use of force, or a situation, a non-arrest turned into an arrest situation, because everything wasn't handled exactly perfectly. Very frequently, the officer who kind of made the main mistake will be the first one to come forward and say, hey, sorry guys, I screwed that up. Or I might go to another officer and say, hey, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, because when I did this, I thought you were going to do this. And then they'll respond to me, with, I'm sorry, I thought you were going this route, whatever. We do this very frequently. One point that I would like to make about officer-involved shootings is that quite often the reason that somebody ended up getting shot is because everything was not handled perfectly. Now, perfection is a lot to ask. We don't live in a perfect world, and it's impossible to expect people to do everything perfectly all the time, but that is something that we strive to do. That being said, there are some situations where it doesn't matter what the officer did, it was going to end in a shooting, and we need to understand that I'm not saying that every time an officer shoots somebody, it's because they effed up. This is a clear situation where the reason there was a shooting is because somebody effed up. And, I'll get into some of my thoughts on that later. But let's start by watching the video, and we'll learn what happened, and then we'll kind of go from there. So just before the video even starts, I want to point out that there's 1, 2, 3 officers on scene. some of the articles that I read said that Dante Wright was killed for having a bad license plate and something hanging from his rearview mirror. That's not true. The traffic stop was conducted, or the PC for the stop was the license plate and the thing hanging from his mirror. These officers all knew that he had a warrant. He had a warrant for aggravated robbery. That's where he committed a robbery, or he was charged with committing a robbery while being armed with a firearm. So it's an aggravated robbery. These officers knew that he had this warrant, and that's why there's so many of them. If this was just a traffic stop for a fail to register or a bad license plate, usually this is just an officer who's driving down the road, sees a car, pulls it over, gives them a quick warning or gives them a quick ticket, whatever. No, this was a targeted traffic stop because they were trying to place him under arrest for his warrant. That's why there's so many officers. All right, so what we're doing here is we're talking about mistakes. Talking about things that these officers did wrong, because that's what this trial is all about. One of the things that I kind of want to address is that there were a lot of mistakes made on this traffic stop that led to the conclusion where Dante Wright was shot and killed, and all of the blame is being put on the person who pulled the trigger. But there were a lot of mistakes made on the stop that contributed to that, and I just want to point that out. And it's one of the reasons that I kind of have my final thoughts that I'm going to have. So the first thing I want to point out is that right here, this officer that's doing the handcuffing and searching, we are taught a variety of ways to secure people. One of the ways that we're taught to secure people is when, at least where I am, what we're trained to do is we use that door frame. So when I pull someone out of the car, I grab their hand, the hand that's closest to me, and I pull them out and I say, "Hey, sir, go ahead and step out of the car." As they're getting out of the car, that hand goes behind their back. I reach over, I grab the other hand, and what I do is I push them into that door frame, because that way they've got their hands behind their back and they're wedged into that door frame. It's very uncomfortable for them. If they try to move, I can shove them further in, can put my knee in their back, whatever I have to do, so that they are not going to be able to move. Another thing that we do is we say, "Hey, put your hands behind your back, put your palms together, interlace your fingers like you're praying." So hands behind your back, interlace your fingers, or palms together, interlace your fingers like you're praying. Now, what you can do when somebody has their fingers interlaced like that is you can come over the top and you grab them. If you can see the way your knuckles are, if I'm holding all your fingers together, you can try this with a friend if you want to. When your fingers are interlocked and I'm holding the top and bottom finger and I'm pressing them together, your knuckles automatically lock together. So when your hands are behind your back and your knuckles are locked in like that, and I've got a hold of that clump of fingers, some people will even, you've got them like that, and they'll just grab kind of these two fingers, and if there's a finger in the middle of that and you grab these two, you're locking their hands together. So that's a technique for maybe some females or some people with smaller hands to immobilize a suspect. So you've got him wedged into that door frame. You got his hands locked together so that he can't possibly fight or move. This situation, and this is something that I've caught myself doing before too, and it's very frustrating, it's embarrassing when someone gets loose from you. Typically, if it's someone with a violent felony, I'm very careful to do things the right way. Let's put it that way. But this officer's kind of loosely got the suspect's hands, and he's going to do a quick pat down of the immediate area looking for a weapon. That should be done in the door frame with his hands very secure behind his back. Okay, so now you have this guy, he's about to go in handcuffs. He's giving you indications that he doesn't want to go into handcuffs. You've got him all the way back here on the side of the car. What this officer here needs to do is he needs to turn his body and put his hip up against the car so that this suspect cannot get by him. He's not doing that. He's still kind of loosely holding onto his hands. The other thing, sorry, I keep pointing at my screen. Right here, this is Officer Potter's hands. If you saw the first one, she slid on the outside of his back, and then the second one, she's also sliding on the outside of his back. What she needs to be doing is reaching in and hooking this arm, get under his elbow, and probably I kind of like get up in there, and you hold on to their shoulder or their bicep. And when you do, you hold on tight. I'm not trying to hurt somebody, but I'm trying to make them understand that I've got a hold of you. No matter what you do, you're not getting away from me. And we do that by getting body to body and getting close, and you hold on, you know, like he's got a wing sticking out. This right here is like a chicken wing. You can stick your arm in that and you can hold on to it, wrap it up, and then use your other hand to hold his hand up so that he can be handcuffed. I don't know what she's doing. They have no control over the suspect in this situation. And then right there, you saw how he was very easily to pull his elbow up, spin around, and he's back in the car right now. Something I forgot to mention too, you have a guy who his warrant was for aggravated robbery. There's a variety of ways to conduct that stop. One that we're actually taught is that we don't even approach the car. The first thing that we do is we get a couple cars online. We get all the traffic stopped behind us. You'll have 3 or 4 officers behind their cars with their guns drawn, and you start giving him orders. You say, driver, turn off your vehicle, take your keys out of the window and put them on top of the car. You know, so you got them throwing their keys out the window. Then you have them unbuckle, reach out of the car, open the door from the outside, and step out with their hands up. You have them with their hands up, and they walk backwards to you. You get them down on their knees, and then there's a variety of ways that you can put them in a handcuffing position there. At a minimum, when I approach that car, if I decided not to do a felony stop, if I decided I was going to approach this vehicle, the thing I would have done, and I literally just did this the other day with a guy who was pulling a stolen trailer. He was very nice. And I said, okay, sir. He also told me that he had his concealed carry permit, and his weapon was in the seat next to him. Said, you know what? Thanks for letting me know. Do me a favor. Go ahead and turn the truck off. Put the keys up on the dashboard for me. He did that. Then he got out of the car. We didn't have any problems. They left the car running when they pulled him out of the car, and that's going to create some more issues for him. So right there, Officer Potter, you know, everything that they've done so far has failed. They got him out of the car. They failed to maintain any kind of control. They failed to get him into handcuffs. They don't know if he's carrying weapons or anything like that. Her first instinct is that when he gets back in the driver's seat, that she's going to tase him. That's not a bad idea. The problem is the car's still running. He's in the driver's seat, and you don't want to tase somebody in the driver's seat of a car that's running. Before watching the video in as detail as I did, my initial thoughts were, okay, the guy has a warrant for aggravated robbery. He's resisting arrest during a traffic stop. I don't have a problem with an officer drawing their weapon on him. You know, he gets back in his car. He can use that car as a weapon. He can have weapons in the car. I don't have a problem. You draw your weapon on him, and you use some you use some language. You know, you want that guy to believe he's not going to hurt you, and he's not going to hurt any of your friends, and that you have a tool in your hand, and that you can prevent him from hurting you. So that was what my initial thoughts were. I can go back a little bit. You heard her say when she was drawing her weapon, "I'm going to tase you." And there's her weapon. So it is true what she's saying in her trial. She drew her firearm thinking it was her taser, and she pointed at him. My initial thought was that she had her weapon out for a felony stop. Then a scuffle ensued, and she forgot that she was still holding her weapon, that in her mind she'd already holstered her weapon and drawn her taser. You can see this officer here. This is his taser. and it's cross-drawn, meaning that the butt of the weapon is forward, the reason that's like that is because on the other hip is his firearm. I'm right-handed. This is my right hand. My taser is on my left hip. My firearm is on my right hip. I have to hit a button and pop that taser out if I'm going to use my taser. I can't foresee a circumstance where I would draw my weapon and instantly believe that I had my taser in my hand. So this was the final mistake of this traffic stop. She fires her weapon one time, striking him in the chest, and kills him. Another thing that I want to point out about this, because we're pointing out people's mistakes. Dante Wright had a warrant for aggravated robbery. I don't know if he was guilty of aggravated robbery or not. I don't believe that the trial was complete. I believe he had charges and he was out on bond or something, and he somehow violated and he was wanted. Because it was a case from 2020 or 2019. I can't quite remember. But that was his first mistake. Whether or not he was guilty of actually aggravated robbery, he did something. And whatever he did, it was enough to provide the police with probable cause to file charges against him. So that was his first mistake. His second mistake was that he violated the terms of his bond, or whatever it was. So now he had a warrant. So he's made two very serious mistakes. The third mistake was that he took a volatile situation. He made it worse by resisting arrest and trying to get into his vehicle. I'm not saying that if you resist arrest, you deserve to die. But I'm saying there is a lot of mistakes being made in this situation. And Dante Wright is one of the people who made a very serious mistake. And that ultimately led to his shooting death. So I'll also say, before I get too far into my own opinion, I read two articles while I was preparing for this. This was the second one that I read. It reads, a suburban Minneapolis police officer who said she confused her handgun for a taser was convicted of manslaughter Thursday in the death of Dante Wright, prompting tears from the black man's parents and jubilant celebration by supporters outside the courtroom of guilty, guilty, guilty. Then they go on to say that they deliberated for 4 days and yada, yada, yada. This was a fairly straightforward article talking about the guilty verdict. This one from the New York Times is actually the first article that I read. And this one is one of those ones that they put a lot of things into the article where I don't believe that they're just telling you the news or telling you what happened, but they're trying to paint a picture. And these are the type of things that kind of make situations worse, which lead to this whole trial, which I'm going to get to in a moment. So here, this paragraph, the jury deliberated across 4 days, agreeing on guilty verdicts for Kim Potter, 49, a white woman who testified she had never fired her gun in 26 years on the police force until she saw a single bullet into the chest of Dante Wright, a 20-year-old black man who had been driving to a car wash in April. So this trial was formulated around the fact that a 49-year-old white woman had shot a young black man who was driving to a car wash. So you have a white police officer and a black man who was driving to get his car washed. That's not what this trial was about. This trial was about whether or not a police officer who makes a mistake in good faith should be criminally prosecuted in that case. That's really what this case was about. And that's kind of where I start to have a problem. Being a police officer is a very dangerous job. If you make a mistake as a police officer, somebody might lose their life. That somebody might very well be you. That's a situation that I have to accept every single day that I go to work, is that I'm expected to do things a certain way because this is the way I'm trained. If I choose to do something not consistent with the way I'm trained, I'm taking on some additional risk. There are times where I don't do things exactly the way I'm trained. I make those decisions based on my experience and my abilities. So there's a lot of officers that in X situation, they draw their weapon, they hold somebody at gunpoint. I don't necessarily do that. I know that the right thing to do for safety is to have your firearm in that situation, but I don't always do that. That could possibly lead to me making a mistake that ends in my own loss of life. I understand that. There's also the possibility that I'm going to go to work someday and I'm either going to draw my weapon and for all the right reasons fire my weapon and kill somebody, but maybe that's the wrong person. Maybe I'm going to be in a situation where I have my weapon out and I don't mean to fire my weapon. It goes off and somebody dies. There's always the possibility that while driving to a scene, I'm going to have a car accident. I'm going to kill somebody. There's other situations where there might be somebody who's hurt, and when I arrive on scene, I see a certain set of circumstances, and that leads me a certain direction. And by me going in that direction, this person over here might die. And it turns out that I went the wrong direction when I showed up on scene. But I was acting in good faith. There's a lot of times where somebody might die in a situation that I'm dealing with. And that's a horrible thing. This situation with Officer Potter, I want to speak specifically about that. I had a kind of an argument on Facebook with one of my really good friends a couple weeks ago before the trial was over. And he posted something about her that appeared that he was defending her. And I commented, my comment was something to the effect of, how would you feel if you were on a traffic stop with another officer, they drew their pistol thinking it was their taser, they fired that pistol, and they hit you or one of your buddies? That would exclude you from ever being able to be a police officer again. And I said, would you ever want to work with that officer? And his reply was, no, I wouldn't want to work with her, but also she's not the devil that they're trying to make her out to be. On that point, we absolutely agree. I think we agree on the whole point, to be honest. What Officer Kim Potter did, in my opinion, would prevent her from ever being a police officer ever again. I think that there should be severe consequences for her actions. Those consequences would be losing her job and her ability to ever have that job again, as well as some possible, I think that she's open for civil liability in that case. When it comes to criminal prosecution, I think that you have to meet a certain criteria before you take something that is a workplace accident and turn it into a criminal act. I think that there's a bridge that needs to be crossed. And I think an officer working in good faith, I think as long as they're working in good faith and trying to do the right thing, I don't think that bridge needs to be crossed. And I think by crossing that bridge, you're sending a very dangerous message to police officers across the country. And I think that's my main takeaway from this case. Officer Potter, I'm sorry about my language, but she fucked up. She fucked up bad. And somebody died because of it. That's horrible. She's going to have to live the rest of her life knowing that because she fucked up and she did not do the right thing, somebody died. Even if you don't believe that person was a good person, he didn't need to die that day. He didn't deserve to die. There needs to be consequences for that. But those consequences don't always need to be criminal proceedings. And I think we're halfway down a slippery slope. with the way we're treating police officers who make a mistake on the job. We're all human. None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. You're never going to stop mistakes from happening. And if you have officers who believe if they're trying their hardest to do the right thing, but they make a mistake and that could send them to prison for the rest of their life, what you're going to find is you're going to have officers who are going to be not very willing to go into potentially dangerous situations. Dante Wright had a warrant for aggravated robbery. That's a violent felony. If officers are, I could see a situation where an officer is going to get behind a car and they're going to run that tag and they're going to know who's in that car. But they're going to think, man, if he takes off and he hits a kid who's crossing the street and kills him, am I going to go to prison for that? If he takes off and we get in a foot pursuit and during that foot pursuit, my body camera comes off or malfunctions because they do, or if I catch him and we get into a fight and it's too close for my body camera to pick up what's going on, it's just me and him, and I'm in a fight for my life and I have to put my gun to his head and kill him with no witnesses, am I going to go to prison for that? And I'm bringing up extreme examples, but it doesn't have to be so extreme. The point I'm making is that verdicts like this are sending a clear message to police officers that if you make a mistake while you're putting forth your best effort into doing your job, you might get sent to prison for that. I'm going to make a video very soon about a prosecutor who works very near to where I work, his very words were, if you fall for the temptation to fire your weapon, I will prosecute you. He didn't qualify that statement, and he even doubled down on that statement later. It's on video, and I'll show it to you. When you have prosecutors saying things like that, and then you have officers here who made a mistake in good faith, and they're getting sent to prison for it, what you're creating is an environment where officers are going to second guess whether or not they want to proactively do their job. So I think that's about all I have to say about this topic. Those are going to be my thoughts for today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.